The sun hung like a copper penny against the bleached Arizona sky, baking the dirt streets of Dry Willow until they cracked like old leather. Eden Hale stood at the weathered door of the Silver Comet, her knuckles white around the handle of a battered carpet bag. The smell of iron and horse sweat clung to the air, mixing with something that might have been coffee but was more likely burnt chicory. She knocked. The sound barely carried over the lazy buzz of flies and the distant ring of a blacksmith's hammer. "We're closed," came a voice from within, rough as sandpaper. "I'm not here for a drink," Eden called back, squinting against the dust devil spinning down Main Street. "I'm here about the job." The door opened with a groan that spoke of rusty hinges and neglect. The man who filled the doorway was tall enough that Eden had to tilt her head back, his shoulders broad beneath a faded blue shirt that had seen better decades. Dark hair fell across eyes the color of winter storm clouds, and a day's worth of stubble shadowed a jaw that looked carved from granite. "Asa Crow," he said, not offering his hand. His right arm stayed close to his side, fingers twitching slightly against his thigh. "You the one who answered the notice?" "Eden Hale." She met his gaze steadily. "I can cook." "Can you now?" His eyes traveled from her patched calico dress to the scuffed boots peeking beneath its hem. "This ain't no church social kitchen, Miss Hale." "Good thing I ain't no church social cook, Mr. Crow." Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or the ghost of amusement. He stepped back, jerking his head toward the dim interior. "One meal. You cook one meal that satisfies the regulars. The job's yours. You fail." He shrugged. "Trail's that way." Eden lifted her chin. "When do I start?" "Now." The inside of the Silver Comet was exactly what she'd expected, rough-hewn tables scarred by knives and spurs, a bar that had lost its shine years ago, and air thick enough to cut with a butter knife. 3 men hunched over whiskey at the far table, their laughter dying as she entered. One of them, a grizzled prospector with more dirt than skin showing, elbowed his companion. "Looky here, boys, Crow's hired himself a pretty little hen. That hen better know how to fry more than eggs." The second man drawled, his yellowed teeth flashing in what passed for a smile. Eden didn't acknowledge them. She'd heard worse in a dozen towns across the territory. Instead, she followed Asa through a narrow doorway into what might generously be called a kitchen. A cast-iron stove squatted in one corner like a sulking beast, its surface thick with grease. Shelves held a meager collection of dented pots and mismatched dishes, a sack of beans slumped against the wall beside potatoes that had seen better days. "This what I'm working with?" she asked, rolling up her sleeves. "Problem. Not if you've got salt, lard, and something that passes for flour." Asa pointed to a cupboard. "Water's out back. Pump's temperamental, like everything else in this town." He turned to leave, then paused. "Those men out there, they've run off 3 cooks in 2 months. They're expecting you to fail." Then they're in for disappointment. Eden was already tying her mother's apron around her waist, the faded blue fabric soft with age. Her fingers found the familiar burn mark on the hem, traced it absently. "We'll see." Alone in the kitchen, Eden took inventory with practiced efficiency. The beans were old but not weevilled. The potatoes had eyes but weren't rotten. In the cupboard, she found a precious tin of baking powder, some salt pork, and, miracle of miracles, a small jar of molasses. She set to work, movements automatic from years of practice. First, the beans into water to soak while she stoked the stove. The kindling caught reluctantly, smoking like a peace pipe before settling into honest flame. While the stove heated, she attacked the accumulated grease with sand and determination, scrubbing until the iron gleamed dully in the lamplight. The pump out back was indeed temperamental, requiring sweet talk and a firm hand to coax water from its depths. Eden filled 2 buckets, muscles in her arms protesting the familiar weight. On her second trip, she noticed Asa watching from the doorway, his expression unreadable. "Change your mind about hiring a woman," she asked, not pausing in her work. Just wondering if you always work like you're racing the devil. In my experience, Mr. Crow, the devil don't need much of a head start. This time, the amusement reached his eyes, crinkling the corners before he turned away. By the time the dinner hour arrived, the kitchen smelled of redemption. Bean soup thick with salt pork simmered on the stove, seasoned with wild sage Eden had spotted growing behind the building. Cornbread golden with that precious molasses cooled on the table. She'd even managed a dried apple pie from the withered fruit she'd found in a forgotten barrel, sweetened with more molasses and her mother's secret, a pinch of vinegar to brighten the flavor. The three regulars filed in like judges at a hanging, faces set in skeptical lines. Eden served without flourish, setting bowls before them with steady hands despite the tremor in her stomach. The prospector poked at his soup suspiciously. His companion sniffed the cornbread like a hound checking for poison. The first spoonful of soup brought silence. The second brought a grunt that might have been approval. By the time they reached for second helpings, Eden knew she'd won. Well, I'll be hornswoggled. The prospector muttered around a mouthful of cornbread. Tastes like my mama's cooking, back in Missouri. Better, corrected the yellow-toothed man. Your mama couldn't cook worth spit, Jeb. More men trickled in as word spread, a full belly being rarer than gold in Dry Willow. The Silver Comet filled with an assortment of cowboys, miners, and drifters. Eden moved between stove and tables, refilling bowls and deflecting crude compliments with practiced ease. Her feet ached, her back screamed, but she'd felt worse. When the last customer stumbled out into the night, Asa emerged from wherever he'd been watching. He surveyed the empty pot, the crumb-scattered plates, the stack of coins on the bar. "Are you staying at the boarding house?" he asked. Eden hesitated. The weight of her carpet bag held everything she owned, including the $3 that wouldn't cover a week's lodging. "I'll find something." Room above the kitchen's empty. Roof leaks when it rains, which ain't often, and the wind comes through the walls. But it's got a bed and a lock. "What's the rent?" "Keep cooking like that. We'll call it even." Eden studied his face, searching for the catch. Men didn't offer favors without expecting payment of one kind or another, but Ace's expression remained neutral. His storm cloud eyes focused somewhere past her shoulder. "I'll take it," she said finally. He nodded, pulled a key from his pocket. "Stairs are out back. Watch the third step. It's rotted through." He turned to go, then paused. "Why here?" "Pardon. A woman with your skills could find work in Tucson, Phoenix, somewhere civilized. Why Dry Willow?" Eden's hand went unconsciously to her wrist, fingers covering old scars beneath the sleeve. "Sometimes civilized is just another word for cruel, Mr. Crow. At least the desert's honest about trying to kill you." He studied her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. "Get some rest, Miss Hale. Breakfast crowd starts before dawn." After he left, Eden climbed the rickety stairs to her new home. The room was everything he'd promised, sparse, drafty, and forgotten. But the lock worked, and the narrow bed bore clean if threadbare blankets. Through the single window, she could see the vast sweep of stars over the desert, unmarred by city smoke or pretense. She unpacked slowly, placing her few possessions with care. Her mother's wooden spoon, split down the handle but still serviceable. A tattered copy of Pilgrim's Progress, the daguerreotype she couldn't bear to look at but couldn't bear to leave behind. As she lay down fully dressed, a habit born of too many quick departures, Eden heard footsteps below. Through the gaps in the floorboards, she glimpsed Asa moving through the kitchen, checking the stove's damper, testing the back door's lock. He moved like a man expecting trouble, right hand hovering near where a gun would rest. When he finally retired to what must be a room behind the storeroom, Eden heard the distinctive sound of a rifle being cleaned. The rhythmic click-slide-click was oddly comforting. Speaking of someone else who slept light and ready, Outside, a coyote howled at the rising moon. The wind whispered secrets through the walls, bringing the scent of creosote and distant rain. Eden closed her eyes, one hand wrapped around the wooden spoon beneath her pillow. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. There would be more meals to cook, more leering men to navigate, more suspicious townsfolk to win over. But tonight, for the first time in months, she had a locked door and a roof that probably wouldn't cave in. It wasn't much. In Dry Willow, it was everything. As sleep finally claimed her, Eden didn't see the shadow that passed beneath her window, paused, then moved on. She didn't hear the soft footfall on the stairs that stopped at the rotted third step, and she didn't know that miles away, in a ranch house built on debt and misery, Silas Rook was reading a letter that made him smile, a cold, calculating expression that would have sent ice through her veins. The desert held its breath, waiting. In Dry Willow, nothing stayed buried forever. Not secrets, not the past, and certainly not the kind of trouble that followed women who ran alone. But tonight, Eden Hale slept and dreamed of bread rising in the warmth of an honest oven, while somewhere below, Asa Crow kept watch over ghosts of his own. 3 weeks had passed since Eden arrived in Dry Willow, and the Silver Comet had never seen such steady business. Word of her cooking spread like wildfire through the mining camps and cattle ranges, drawing men from miles around. She'd settled into a rhythm up before dawn to start the bread, beans soaking while she served breakfast, pies cooling while she prepared supper. It was a Tuesday afternoon, the heat shimmering off the street like water, when the past walked through her door. Eden was elbow-deep in bread dough when she heard it. The particular cadence of expensive boots on wooden boards, the swish of fine fabric that had no business in a place like Dry Willow. Her hands stilled, flour drifting like ash in the slanted sunlight. Well, well, Eden Hale. The voice slithered through the kitchen doorway like a rattlesnake through dry grass. Eden forced herself to keep kneading, though her knuckles had gone white beneath the flour. Mr. Rook. She didn't turn around. If you're wanting lunch, you'll need to wait like everyone else. Silas Rook stepped into the kitchen, and the temperature seemed to drop despite the blazing stove. He hadn't changed much. Same ink-black hair slicked back with pomade. Same thin mustache waxed to points. Same velvet coat that cost more than most folks saw in a year. His smile was the same too, sharp as broken glass and twice as dangerous. Now, is that any way to greet an old friend? We were never friends. No. He circled the table where she worked, predator slow. But your dear mother and I had such an understanding. Eden's jaw clenched. My mother's dead. Yes, tragic that. Fire's a terrible way to go. He picked up her mother's wooden spoon from the counter, turned it over in his manicured hands. Though I suppose it was quick. The smoke, they say, takes you before the flames. The dough beneath Eden's hands might have been Silas's throat for all the violence in her kneading. State your business or get out. My business. He set the spoon down with deliberate care. Why, I'm here to collect what's owed. Your mother's debt didn't die with her. You know, these things, they pass down like heirlooms. I don't owe you anything. The law says different. He produced a paper from his coat pocket, unfolded it with theatrical precision. $300, plus interest. Comes to near $500 now. Eden finally looked at him, flour streaking her cheek where she'd pushed back a strand of hair. That's a lie. My mother paid you every cent. Did she? Funny? I don't recall that. And without receipts, he shrugged eloquently. Well, a man's word is his bond, and my word says you owe me $500. The kitchen door swung open. Asa filled the doorway, his presence sudden and solid as a mountain. His eyes took in the scene. Eden rigid at the table, Silas lounging against the counter like he owned the place. Kitchen's closed to customers, Asa said quietly. Silas's smile widened. The proprietor, Mr. Crow. Isn't it I've heard about you? Confederate scout, they say, man of few words and fewer friends. That's right. Then we have something in common. I too prefer to keep my circle selective. Silas straightened his cuffs. I was just explaining to Miss Hale here about her inheritance. Debts, like sins, follow us wherever we run. The lady says she doesn't owe you anything. The lady says a lot of things, I'm sure, doesn't make them true. Asa moved into the kitchen, placing himself between Eden and Silas. The movement was casual, but Eden noticed how his right hand stayed loose at his side, how his weight shifted to the balls of his feet. Time for you to go. Of course, I'm a reasonable man. Silas moved toward the door, paused. Eden, you have 30 days to settle your mother's account. After that, well, there are ways to collect. Your mother learned that. Shame if history were to repeat itself. He tipped his hat, mockery in the gesture, and was gone, leaving only the scent of pomade and threat behind. Eden stood frozen, hands buried in dough that had gone cold. The tremor started in her fingers, spread up her arms, through her chest, until she was shaking like autumn leaves. Sit down. Asa's voice cut through the roar in her ears. A chair appeared behind her knees. She sank into it, flour smearing across her apron as she wrapped her arms around herself. You know him. It wasn't a question. He killed her. The words came out flat, emotionless. Oh, he didn't light the match himself. He's too clever for that, but he owned the boarding house where she worked, locked the doors at night. He did, said it was for the women's protection. A bitter laugh. When the fire started, they couldn't get out. 7 women died. My mother was one of them. Asa moved to the stove, poured coffee from the pot that always simmered there. He set a cup in front of her, the ordinary gesture somehow steadying. The debt. She borrowed money to bury my father, paid it back twice over in work. But Silas never gave receipts. After the fire, he came to me with that same paper, said I could work it off like she did. Eden's hands tightened around the cup. I ran instead. And he found you. He always does. 3 towns now, each time. I think I've gone far enough. She looked up at him. I'll leave tomorrow. Tonight, if you want. I won't bring his trouble to your door. You'll stay? Eden blinked. Mr. Crow. Isa. He pulled out the other chair, sat across from her. This close. She could see the fine lines around his eyes, the scar that bisected his left eyebrow. You'll stay because running hasn't worked. You'll stay because the Silver Comet needs a cook. And you'll stay because men like Silas Rook shouldn't always get what they want. You don't understand. He has money, connections, the law. The law's what men make it. Out here, that means something different than in his fancy courthouse. Asa leaned back. 30 days. He said, a lot can happen in 30 days. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting you finish that bread before it's ruined. I'm suggesting you serve supper like nothing's happened. And I'm suggesting that tomorrow we pay a visit to Sheriff Epps. The sheriff's older than Moses and half as useful. Maybe, but he's got something Rook doesn't. What's that? A conscience that still troubles him at night. Asa stood. Finish the bread. Eden. Whatever comes, we'll face it better on full stomachs. After he left, Eden sat in the quiet kitchen, listening to the tick of the stove cooling. The dough on the table was beyond saving, but she'd make another batch. She'd learned long ago that keeping her hands busy kept the fear at bay. As she worked, she thought about Asa's words. We'll face it, not you'll face it. It had been so long since anyone had offered to stand with her that she'd almost forgotten what it felt like. Dangerous. That feeling. Hope was a luxury she couldn't afford. That evening, the Silver Comet filled as usual. Eden served beans and cornbread, smiled at the regular customers' jokes. deflected Jeb the prospector's increasingly creative compliments. But she noticed things she'd missed before. How Asa positioned himself where he could see both doors. How his coat hung loose enough to hide a shoulder holster. How the other men gave him space without seeming to realize they did it. Near closing time, a package arrived. No sender's name, just Eden scrawled across brown paper. Inside, wrapped in what had once been a piece of her mother's apron, was the broken wooden spoon, the half she'd kept, the half that should have been buried with her mother. A note was tucked beneath it. Found this among her things. Thought you'd want both pieces. R. Eden's hands didn't shake this time. Instead, a cold certainty settled in her chest like winter frost. He'd been in her mother's grave, disturbed her rest to make a point. Problem. Asa had appeared beside her, quiet as smoke. She showed him the spoon, the note, watched his jaw tighten as he understood. Lock your door tonight, he said quietly. Third step still creaks. Anybody comes up, you'll hear it. Asa. Lock it, Eden. She did, but sleep didn't come easy. And when it did, she dreamed of fire and locked doors and her mother's voice calling through smoke, sometime near dawn. She woke to footsteps below. Through the floor cracks, she saw Asa making his rounds, checking windows, testing doors, finally settling in the main room with a rifle across his knees. He'd kept watch all night, for her. In 30 days, Silas would come collecting, but for the first time since her mother died, Eden wasn't facing the devil alone. That had to count for something. Didn't it? The desert wind moaned through the walls, carrying the scent of sage and distant rain. Somewhere in the darkness, a coyote howled, lonely, defiant, alive. Eden clutched the broken spoon and made her own vow to the uncaring stars. She was done running. Whatever came next, she'd meet it here, in this forgotten town with its temperamental water pump and drafty rooms and one quiet man who stood between her and the dark. The desert had tried to kill her and failed. Silas Rook would learn that she'd inherited more than debts from her mother. She'd inherited the kind of stubbornness that had carved homes from hostile land, that had built towns where none should exist. Eden Hale was done being prey. In Dry Willow, she'd learned to bite back. The package arrived at dawn, left on the kitchen doorstep like an offering to a vengeful god. Eden nearly tripped over it carrying water from the pump, the bucket sloshing as she caught herself against the doorframe. Inside the burlap wrapping her mother's broken wooden spoon and a scorched piece of apron, still smelling faintly of smoke after all these months. No note this time, none needed. He's escalating. Asa's voice came from behind her. She hadn't heard him approach. The man moved like a ghost when he chose to. He wants me rattled. Eden set the items on the counter with steady hands, though her stomach churned. Wants me to run. Will you? She met his storm-gray eyes. Would you? Something shifted in his expression. No, but I've got less sense than most. That night, the silver comet burned. Eden woke to the acrid bite of smoke, her mother's screams echoing in her ears before she realized they were her own. Flames licked at the kitchen wall, casting dancing shadows through the cracks in her floor. She grabbed the wooden spoon, both pieces now, and the daguerreotype, stuffing them in her apron pocket as she flew down the stairs. The third step, rotten as promised, gave way entirely. She caught herself on the rail, splinters biting deep, and half fell the rest of the way. Aiden! Asa appeared through the smoke, soot already streaking his face. Out the back! Together they fought the fire with buckets and blankets, joined soon by others who formed a brigade from the pump. Jeb the prospector worked alongside the banker he usually cursed. The minister's wife hefted buckets beside saloon girls in their night dresses. Dry Willow might be a hard town, but fire was everyone's enemy in the desert. By dawn, they'd saved most of the building, though the kitchen wall was charred black and the smell of smoke permeated everything. Eden stood surveying the damage, her dress ruined, her hands blistered from the bucket handles. Could have been worse, Sheriff Epps wheezed. His ancient frame bent nearly double from the night's exertion. Nobody hurt, building still standing. This time, Asa said quietly. The sheriff's rheumy eyes sharpened. You saying this wasn't an accident? I'm saying coal oil doesn't spontaneously appear on outside walls. That's a serious accusation. Mr. Crow, got any proof? Asa's jaw tightened. Eden touched his arm lightly. No, Sheriff, no proof. Epps nodded slowly. Thought not. Terrible thing. Fires. Start from the smallest sparks sometimes. A man should be careful with his lanterns. He paused meaningfully. All men should be careful. After he shuffled off, Asa turned to Eden. Why didn't you? Because he knows. He just can't do anything about it. She looked at the scorched wall. Silas owns half the territory's judges. The sheriff's old, but he's not stupid. So we do nothing. No. Eden's chin lifted. We learn to fight back. That afternoon, she found Asa behind the stable, setting up bottles on a fence rail. His rifle leaned against a post, and a revolver lay on a flat stone. I want to learn, she said without preamble. He studied her for a long moment. It's not just about pulling a trigger. I know. Do you killing changes a person, even when they deserve it? So does being helpless. Eden picked up the revolver, surprised by its weight. So does watching everything you love burn. Asa moved behind her, adjusting her stance. His hands covered hers, positioning her grip. Don't fight the weight. Work with it. Breathe in. Sight your target. Squeeze on the exhale. She could feel the warmth of him at her back, steady and solid. His voice low in her ear. Don't jerk. Squeeze smooth, like you're calling the bullet home. The first shot went wide. The second clipped the bottle's neck. By the third, she found the rhythm. Breathe. Sight. Squeeze. The bottle exploded in a shower of glass. Natural talent, Asa murmured. Or you've done this before. My father taught me to shoot rabbits. Eden lowered the gun. Before he died, he said a woman alone should know how to bite. Smart man. They practiced until the sun dropped low, painting the desert in shades of copper and blood. Eden's arm ached. Her ears rang despite the cotton Asa had given her. But 6 bottles lay shattered on the ground. Same time tomorrow, she asked. After the breakfast rush? He was cleaning the rifle with practiced movements. Eden, this won't stop him. No, but maybe it'll make him think twice. She paused. Why are you helping me? Asa's hands stilled on the rifle. Maybe I don't like bullies. Maybe I think the Silver Comet needs its cook. Maybe... He looked up at her. Maybe I'm tired of watching good people run from bad men. That night, Eden served supper in the smoke-damaged dining room. The regulars grumbled about the smell, but cleaned their plates just the same. She'd managed beans and cornbread on the hastily repaired stove, and nobody complained about the slight char flavor. Word of the fire had spread. Throughout the evening, townspeople stopped by, some to gawk, others to help. Mrs. Hutchins from the general store brought new dish towels. The blacksmith offered to forge new hooks for the damaged wall. Even some of the saloon girls from the Red Door chipped in coins for repairs. Don't look so surprised. One of them, a redhead named Scarlett, told Eden, we all know what it's like to have men think they own us. Near closing time, a stranger entered. Unlike the usual drifters and cowboys, this one wore city clothes and carried a leather case that screamed legal documents. He ordered coffee, then asked quietly, Miss Eden Hale. Eden's hand tightened on the coffee pot. Who's asking? Thomas Garrett, Esquire, from Phoenix. He glanced around, lowered his voice further. I knew your mother. Eden set down the pot carefully. Did you now? She consulted me about certain debts. I have documents that might interest you. He patted the leather case. Not here, though. Too many years. Before Eden could respond, Asa materialized at her elbow. Problem. No problem, Garrett said hastily. Just delivering a message. Miss Hale, I'm staying at the boarding house. Room 4, should you wish to discuss your mother's affairs. He left coins on the table and departed. Leather case clutched tight. Trap, Eden asked. Maybe. Or maybe your mother was smarter than Rook thought. Asa watched the lawyer disappear into the night. I'll go with you. I can handle... I know you can, but you don't have to. They went the next morning, early enough that few people stirred. The boarding house sat on the respectable end of town, paint peeling but pretensions intact. Garrett answered their knock immediately, as if he'd been waiting. Miss Hale, Mr. Crow. Asa's tone didn't invite further questions. The room was sparse but clean. Garrett opened his case, spread papers across the small table. Your mother came to me 2 years ago. She'd been making payments to Silas Rook, but suspected he was cheating the accounts. I helped her document everything. Eden leaned forward. There, in her mother's careful script, were records, dates, amounts, witnesses. She kept receipts. Better. She had witnesses sign each payment. Look here, the total comes to $430. The original loan was only $200. But Silas said she never paid. He lied. Garrett pulled out another document. This is a copy of the original loan agreement. See the terms, no interest rate specified. Under territorial law, that defaults to 6% annually, not the 20% he charged. Why didn't she use this? Eden's voice cracked. She was gathering evidence for a formal complaint when... Garrett's face softened. When the fire happened. I've been looking for you since then. She made me promise. Eden stared at the papers, her mother's determination evident in every carefully recorded payment. Is it enough to stop him? To stop him, probably not. He has judges in his pocket, but to make things difficult for him, to cast doubt on his other loans. Garrett smiled grimly. Oh yes, especially if others come forward. Others. Your mother wasn't his only victim, Miss Hale, just the only one brave enough to fight back. He pushed the papers toward her. These are yours. What you do with them, that's your choice. Outside, Eden clutched the documents like a lifeline. She fought him all that time. Working in his prison, she was fighting him. She was protecting you, Asa said quietly, making sure you'd have weapons when the time came. That afternoon, during the lesson, Eden's shots grouped tight around the bottle's centers. Her hands were steady, her breathing controlled, but Asa noticed the cold determination that had replaced yesterday's nervous energy. You're thinking about killing him. It wasn't a question. Would that be so wrong? Wrong, no. Foolish, maybe. He adjusted her stance slightly. Dead men can't suffer. Living ones can watch everything they built crumble. That night, Eden made a decision. She took the documents to Mrs. Hutchins, whose husband had died in debt to Rook, then to the minister, whose congregation had been decimated by foreclosures, to the saloon girls who paid Rook protection money they couldn't afford. One by one, she planted seeds of rebellion, not with speeches or grand gestures, but with quiet conversations and careful questions. Did you get receipts? What interest rate did he charge? Would you sign a statement if others did too? The fire had been meant to break her. Instead, it had forged her into something harder. Each shooting lesson added steel to her spine. Each person who whispered yes to her questions added fuel to a different kind of fire. Silas Rook had made a miscalculation. He'd thought Eden was like her mother, isolated, friendless, easily controlled. He'd forgotten that fire, while destructive, also cleared ground for new growth. In the smoke-damaged kitchen of the Silver Comet, Eden Hale was cooking up something more dangerous than beans and cornbread. She was cooking up justice. one careful ingredient at a time. And Asa Crow, the silent guardian with ghosts in his eyes, stood ready to ensure she lived long enough to serve it. The pig's head appeared at dawn, ash-stuffed and grinning obscenely from atop a fence post outside the Silver Comet. Its glass marble eyes caught the first rays of sun, reflecting back a mockery of life. Eden found it when she went to pump water, her sharp intake of breath visible in the cool morning air. "Don't touch it," Asa materialized beside her, studying the grotesque display with clinical detachment. "Could be trapped." He used a long pole to knock it down, revealing the note pinned beneath, "Pigs get slaughtered." "Subtle," Eden said, her voice steady despite the bile rising in her throat. "He's getting desperate." Asa kicked dirt over the head. Desperate men make mistakes. But Silas wasn't done. Over the next week, the harassment escalated. Windows shattered in the night. Eden's wash line was cut, her clean aprons trampled in the dirt. The minister's stable burned, though the horses were saved. Mrs. Hutchins found her stores locked jammed with metal shavings. The message was clear: those who stood with Eden would suffer. Some buckled. The banker suddenly remembered urgent business in Tucson. 2 families packed up overnight, heading for California, but others dug in deeper, anger overcoming fear. 23 years I've paid that man protection. Scarlett spat, helping Eden rehang the wash line. 23 years of interest on a loan that should have been paid twice over. I'm done being scared. That evening, a girl stumbled into the Silver Comet just as Eden was banking the stove. 16 at most, dress torn, feet bleeding through worn shoes. She collapsed at the first table, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "Please," she whispered when Eden approached. "Are you Miss Eden? They said you help people." "What's your name?" "Honey." Mina Pike." The girl looked up, revealing a black eye beneath tangled brown hair. "I ran from the Rook Ranch. Mr. Rook bought my debt from the orphanage. Said I had to work it off." Eden's hands clenched. "How long?" 2 years, but the debt never goes down. It only grows. Interest, he says. Room and board. Mina pulled something from her pocket, a photograph, creased and precious. This was hidden in the ranch library, behind books about accounts. Eden's world tilted. The photograph showed her mother, younger, standing beside another woman, on the back, in her mother's hand, sisters in all but blood, belongs to no man. "That other woman," Mina whispered. "That's my ma. She died at the ranch when I was small, in a fire." The pattern clicked into place like bullets in a chamber. How many women had Silas trapped this way? How many fires had claimed those who fought back? "You're safe now," Eden said firmly. "You'll stay here." "He'll come for me. He always—" "Let him come." Eden helped the girl stand. "Asa." They settled Mina in the storage room, away from windows. Asa reinforced the door while Eden tended the girl's feet, listening to her fragmented story. 12 other women at the ranch, all working off impossible debts. Guards who enjoyed their power too much. Ledgers that showed payments never recorded. Interest compounding into infinity. "We have to get them out," Eden said later, watching Asa clean his rifle. 13 women from an armed compound. He looked up. That's not a rescue. That's a war. Then maybe it's time for one. Asa set down the rifle. "Eden, my mother wasn't the only one. How many others?" "Asa, how many daughters wonder why their mothers never came home?" She showed him the photograph. "Mina's mother, my mother, sisters. She called them. They tried to fight him together. And died for it." "Because they were alone. We're not." Eden moved to the window, looking out at the town Silas thought he owned. Mrs. Hutchins lost her daughter 5 years ago. Ran off. Everyone said, but she was at the ranch first, working off her father's debt. The minister's wife whispers about girls who vanish, even Scarlet. I know. Asa's voice was quiet. I've been asking questions too. Eden turned. And you're right, it's bigger than one man's cruelty. It's a system. The orphanages supply the girls, the judges enforce the debts. The sheriff looks away. He stood, crossing to stand beside her. But systems are built by men, and what men build, men can tear down. They spent the night planning. Mina, brave despite her terror, drew maps of the ranch from memory, described guard rotations, weak points in the fences, where the women were kept locked at night. Sunday, she said. Half the guards go to town Sunday afternoon. Mr. Rook holds court at the saloon, collecting debts. 4 days, Eden murmured. Can we be ready in 4 days? We'll have to be. Word spread in whispers. The blacksmith began reshaping old iron into useful shapes. The minister's wife organized medical supplies. Scarlet recruited girls who knew how to handle themselves in a fight. Even Sheriff Epps, wheezing his way through a late-night visit, left his spare rifle accidentally in the kitchen. Can't have official knowledge, he gasped. But unofficially. About time someone put that buzzard in his place. Eden barely slept. Days were spent cooking, maintaining the illusion of normalcy. Nights were for planning, practicing, preparing. Mina helped in the kitchen, flinching every time the door opened but growing steadier by the day. He kept books, Mina said one evening, peeling potatoes with focused intensity. Hidden books, shows the real accounts, where the girls come from, where they go if they cause trouble. Where? His office, behind a portrait of his mother. She shuddered. He made me clean in there, said I should see what happened to girls who didn't appreciate his generosity. More pieces of the puzzle, more evidence of crimes stretching back years. But evidence meant nothing without witnesses, and witnesses meant nothing if they were dead or disappeared. Saturday night, the last before their planned rescue. Eden was closing up when bootsteps echoed on the porch. Not Asa's familiar tread or the shuffle of late diners. These steps were measured, deliberate. Silas entered alone, which somehow made him more menacing than if he'd brought an army. He wore his usual black velvet, but a pistol rode openly on his hip. Miss Pike's guardian is concerned, he said without preamble. Seems she's wandered off. You wouldn't know anything about that. Can't say I do. Eden kept her hands visible, away from the knife on the counter. Lots of folks wander through here. He moved through the room like he owned it, fingers trailing across tables. You know what I admire about you? Eden, your mother's stubbornness. She had it too, right up until the end. Oh. Get out. Did you know she tried to steal from me account books, letters, as if paper could hurt me? He smiled. That cold slash of teeth. The fire was an accident. Truly, I only meant to scare her. But old wood burned so fast. Eden's vision went red. The knife was in her hand before thought formed, but Asa's training held. She didn't throw it. Instead, she said quietly, "Thank you." Silas blinked. "I beg your pardon. For the confession, Mina's not the only one listening." His eyes darted to the kitchen door, where shadows might hide witnesses. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across his face. "Hearsay," he said, but the word lacked conviction. "Maybe, or maybe there's a room full of people who just heard you admit to murdering my mother." Eden set the knife down slowly. "You should go now, while you can." He left, but not before delivering one last threat. "Sunday's tomorrow, Miss Hale. Day of rest, day of reckoning. Debts always come due." After he was gone, Mina crept from the kitchen, Asa behind her. Others emerged from the shadows. Scarlet, Mrs. Hutchins, the minister's wife, they'd all heard, they'd all witnessed. "Tomorrow," Eden said to the assembled group. "Whatever happens tomorrow, we face it together." They dispersed into the night. each to their own preparations. Eden climbed to her room, where she cleaned her father's pistol one more time and checked the rounds. Through the window, she could see lights burning late across Dry Willow. The town was awake, aware, ready. On her small table sat the photograph Mina had found. 2 women, arms linked, defying the world to separate them. Her mother had fought alone in the end. Eden wouldn't make the same mistake. Tomorrow, Silas Rook would learn what happened when the prey became predators, when the isolated found community, when the debts of cruelty finally, inevitably, came due. She touched the broken wooden spoon. Whole now, if scarred. Sometimes broken things, when mended, became stronger than before. Sometimes they became weapons. Tomorrow would tell which kind of broken Eden Hale had become. Sunday arrived clothed in copper dust and tension. The church bell rang its normal pattern, but few answered the call. Instead, the town gathered in strategic positions, rooftops, windows, alleyways. Word had spread Silas hadn't died in the ranch fire. He'd survived, scarred and seething, gathering the remnants of his hired guns for one final reckoning. Eden stood in the Silver Comet's kitchen, checking her ammunition. The breakfast service had been subdued, customers eating quickly before taking their positions. Even the food tasted of waiting. "He'll come at noon." Sheriff Epps wheezed from his chair by the door. Despite his age, he'd insisted on being present. When the sun's highest and shadows shortest, harder to hide. "Let him come," Mina said fiercely. She wore trousers borrowed from the general store and carried a rifle with newfound confidence. The scared girl who'd stumbled into their lives was gone, replaced by someone harder but not broken. Asa entered from his morning patrol, dust painting his dark clothes lighter. 12 riders approaching from the east. Silas is with them. "Just 12? Scarlett frowned. He had more. Some took their chances in the desert rather than face us again. Asa moved to the window. "They're stopping at the town limits." Through the wavy glass, Eden could see them, a line of riders dark against the bleached horizon. Silas sat center, his once fine clothes replaced by trail gear, his face a map of burn scars. Even from this distance, his rage was palpable. "Eden Hale," his voice carried on the still air. "You've taken everything from me, my home, my property, my future. Face me now, or I'll burn this town to ash." "Dramatic," Eden muttered. She checked her father's pistol one last time, then headed for the door. "Where are you going?" Asa caught her arm. "To end this, he wants me, not the town." "That's what he wants you to think." Asa's grip tightened. "This isn't about you anymore, Eden. It's about what you've started, the system you've threatened. He needs to make an example." "Then we make a better one." They stepped out together onto Main Street. The noon sun beat down mercilessly, turning the dirt to powder and the air to brass behind windows and doorways. Eden glimpsed the townsfolk ready with rifles and righteousness. Silas nudged his horse forward, stopping just outside pistol range, his scarred face twisted into what might have been a smile. The cook and the crippled soldier. How poetic. "State your business and move on." Sheriff Epps called from the Silver Comet's porch, his badge glinting despite the tarnish. "This is still a lawful town." "Law," Silas laughed, harsh as a crow's call. "What law protects thieves and harbors runaways? What law burns a man's home and frees his legal property?" "The law that says people aren't property," Eden responded clearly. "The law that's coming, whether you like it or not." "Pretty words, but words don't stop bullets." Silas raised his hand, and his men spread into a firing line. "Last chance, Miss Hale. You and your people stand down. I take what's mine and go. Otherwise, Otherwise what?" Asa stepped forward, his presence somehow filling more space than his body accounted for. "You'll fight the whole town. Look around. Rook. Count the windows. Count the rifles. Do the math. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Silas's ruined features. His men shifted nervously. Also doing that arithmetic, 12 against a town was poor odds. Even for hard cases. You can't hold forever, Silas said, but conviction leaked from his voice like water from a cracked jar. Don't need forever. Eden called, just until sunset. See, Sheriff Epps sent word to the federal marshals 3 days ago. They'll be here by nightfall. Turns out the government takes a dim view of slavery, even the kind dressed up as debt collection. That was a lie. The marshals were still days away, but Silas didn't know that, and doubt was as good as truth in a standoff. One of his men, younger than the rest, spoke up. "Boss, maybe we should." Quiet. Silas's hand dropped to his gun. "I didn't ride all this way to turn tail because of some kitchen girl's bluff." The insult was calculated to provoke, but Eden had learned patience alongside marksmanship. She stood steady, waiting. "Though I wonder." Silas continued, voice carrying clear in the breathless air. "What your precious town will think when they learn the truth about their hero cook. Should I tell them, Eden, about Houston, about why you really run?" Eden's blood chilled, but she kept her face neutral. "Tell whatever lies comfort you." "Lies? Oh no, I had you investigated after our first meeting. Mary Sullivan. That was the name you used there, wasn't it? The senator's daughter who accused you of theft. You fled rather than face trial." "Because the trial was rigged." The words burst out before Eden could stop them. "Just like everything else you and men like you touch." "Perhaps, but mud sticks, doesn't it? How long before your new friends wonder what else you're hiding?" "I'll take my chances with Eden's past over yours any day." "Mrs." Hutchins called from her store's entrance. "We all got histories. Rook, difference is, she's trying to build something better." "Here, here." Other voices rose in agreement. Silas's face darkened. His grand revelation had fallen flat. These people knew Eden now, had fought beside her, had seen her stand when running would have been easier. Whatever shadows lurked in her past mattered less than the woman she'd proven herself to be. "Enough talk." Asa's voice cut through the crowd's murmur. "You came for a reckoning. Rook, you'll get one, but it'll be lawful. You and me, single combat. Winner walks away. Loser accepts the consequences." "No," Eden turned to him. "Asa, you don't have to—" "Yes, I do." His gray eyes found hers, steady as stone. "This is my choice. Eden, my stand." Silas considered, calculating odds. In a fair fight, even scarred and rage-filled, he might take an aging soldier with a damaged gun hand. Terms. Simple. You win, you ride out unmolested. I win. You and your men surrender to the sheriff, face trial for arson, attempted murder, and false imprisonment. "And if I refuse?" Asa shrugged. "Then we do this the hard way. You're 12 against our whole town. Your choice." The silence stretched taut as telegraph wire. Finally. Silas dismounted. "Clear the street." People scattered to safer vantage points. Eden caught Asa's arm as he checked his pistol. "Your hand has been steady for days now." He gave her a ghost of a smile. "Funny how having something to protect clears the shakes." They took positions in the dusty street, the classic showdown Eden had seen play out before, though never with such personal stakes. Silas stood loose and ready, his scarred face a mask of concentrated hate. Asa seemed almost relaxed, his damaged right hand hanging natural at his side. When the bell tolls, Sheriff Epps called. The heartbeat between warning and action stretched eternal. Eden found herself holding her breath, the wooden spoon clutched in her fist like a talisman. Around them, the town waited. The bell tolled. 2 shots cracked as one. Dust kicked up at Silas's feet as his bullet went wide, his draw fast but wild with anger. Asa's shot, deliberate and true. Caught Silas in the right shoulder, spinning him half around. Silas tried to raise his gun again, but his arm wouldn't cooperate. The pistol dropped from nerveless fingers as he sank to his knees, blood darkening his shirt. "It's over," Asa said quietly. And suddenly, it was Silas's men, seeing their leader down and facing a town's worth of rifles, raised their hands in surrender. The sheriff's deputies, ordinary townsfolk pressed into service, moved to disarm them. Eden ran to Asa, checking him for wounds. "You're all right." "Fine. Told you the hand was steady." She laughed, short and shaky. "I never doubted it." They turned to where Dr. Morrison was tending Silas's wound, professional despite personal feelings. The fallen tyrant looked smaller now, diminished by defeat and blood loss. "This isn't over," Silas gasped. "My associates, we'll find other towns to plague," Eden finished. "But not this one, not anymore." As the sun traced its arc toward evening, they secured the prisoners and tended the aftermath. No dead on either side, though Silas would bear his scar to match the ones he'd earned in fire. The federal marshals, when they arrived days later, found a town ready with testimony and evidence. That night, as promised in the scene Eden had envisioned, she and Asa stood watch together, not in passion but in partnership, backs against the stone wall of the silver comet, keeping vigil as the stars wheeled overhead. "Don't stop until sunrise," she murmured, echoing words that had become their mutual promise. "I won't. I swear I'll stay by your side until dawn." His voice carried the weight of all their shared battles. "And the dawn after that, if you'll have me." She leaned her head against his shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him. "That's a long time to stand watch. Good thing I've got nowhere else to be." They sat in comfortable silence as the night deepened. Inside the silver comet, Mina was teaching the other women to make biscuits, their laughter floating through the windows like music. The town slept peaceful for the first time in memory. The shadow of Silas Rook finally lifted. "Oh, you never asked," Eden said eventually. "About Houston, about what he said. Don't need to. I know who you are now. That's enough. The senator's daughter lied, said I stole jewelry when I wouldn't. When I refused his son's advances, they would have sent me to prison." "I know. How? Because you're here, cooking for strangers and fighting for people you barely know. Thieves don't do that. Good people do." Eden felt something ease in her chest, a knot she'd carried so long she'd forgotten its weight. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. Morning comes early, and you promised Jeb extra biscuits." She laughed, the sound bright in the darkness. "Some protector you are." "I protect you from bullets, not hungry miners. Man has to know his limits." They kept watch until dawn painted the desert in shades of rose and gold, transforming the harsh landscape into something almost soft. As the first early risers stirred, Eden and Asa finally stood, stiff from the night but steady in purpose. "Breakfast?" she asked. "Breakfast," he agreed. "And then whatever comes next. Together. No other way I'd want it." They walked into the silver comet side by side, ready to face a new day in a town that had chosen to stand rather than kneel. The wooden spoon in Eden's pocket knocked gently against her hip, whole and useful despite its scars. Sometimes the greatest victories weren't in the shooting, but in the standing, in the choosing to stay when leaving would be easier, in the building of something worth defending. One meal, one day, one kept promise at a time. The sun rose full over Dry Willow, and life went on, better than before, freer than before. And in the kitchen of the Silver Comet, Eden Hale made biscuits for a town that had become home. The news arrived with the Tuesday stage, carried by a drummer who looked too pleased with bad tidings. Eden was kneading bread when he burst through the Silver Comet's door, dust still settling from his arrival. "You folks hear that Rook fellow? One they took to Edgewater for trial walked free yesterday. Judge said insufficient evidence. The rolling pin slipped from Eden's hands, clattering on the floor. Around the dining room, conversations died. Mina, carrying a tray of coffee, went white as bleached muslin.
"That's impossible,"
Mrs. Hutchins protested. "We had 12 witnesses, documents, his own confession in front of the whole town." The drummer shrugged, helping himself to coffee. Judge Cornelius said the witnesses were compromised, having personal interest in the outcome. The documents were circumstantial, and confessions made under duress don't hold water.
"Duress!"
Scarlett's voice could have etched glass. He held those girls prisoner for years, and he claims duress. Eden bent to retrieve the rolling pin, using the moment to compose herself. When she straightened, her face was calm. "Where is he now?" "Word is he's heading to Pine Brook. Got business interests there, apparently. Friends in high places." The drummer lowered his voice conspiratorially. "Though between you and me, he didn't look so high and mighty. That shoulder wound ain't healing clean. And his face?" He whistled low. "Well, let's just say he won't be winning any beauty contests." After the drummer left, the Silver Comet erupted in angry voices. Some called for riding to Pine Brook immediately. Others worried about their families, their businesses. The fear Silas had cultivated for years began creeping back like fog. "We knew this might happen," Asa said quietly, his calm cutting through the chaos. "The law's only as good as the men who enforce it." "So what do we do?" Mina demanded. "Wait for him to come back, to burn us out properly this time?" "No." Eden untied her apron with deliberate movements. "We don't wait. We don't hide. We finish this, but we do it right." "Eden," Asa started. "He's in Pine Brook, then that's where we go. Not with guns blazing, but with something more dangerous." She looked around the room at the faces that had become family. "The truth, and this time, we make sure it sticks." It took 3 days to prepare, 3 days of gathering additional evidence, copying documents, collecting more testimonies. The women Silas had held captive wrote their stories in painful detail. Business owners documented years of extortion. Even some of Silas's former men, facing their own charges, agreed to testify in exchange for leniency. "It's not enough?" Sheriff Epps wheezed, reviewing the stack of papers. "Not if the judges are in his pocket." "Then we go above the judges." Eden replied, "There's a federal prosecutor in Phoenix. Thomas Garrett gave me his name. He's been investigating corruption in the territory." "That's a long shot." "Better than no shot at all." They set out before dawn. Eden, Asa, Garrett the lawyer, and surprisingly, Sheriff Epps. "This badge might not mean much," the old man said, struggling into his saddle. "But it's still federal jurisdiction. Might as well use it while I can." Pine Brook squatted 40 miles through desert and scrub. A town built on mining wealth and watered by corruption. Bigger than Dry Willow. Meaner. With saloons that never closed and law that looked the other way for the right price. They found Silas holding court in the gold mine saloon, surrounded by admirers and sycophants, his scarred face twisted into a mockery of a smile when they entered. "The cook comes calling. How delightful." He gestured to the bartender. "Set them up drinks. We're all friends here." "We're not here for drinks," Eden said evenly. "No, then what another shooting match. I'm afraid my shoulder's not quite up to it." He patted the sling with false rue. "Your man shoots true. I'll give him that." "We're here to offer you a choice." Eden placed a leather portfolio on the bar. "Sign this confession. Detail your crimes, all of them. Turn evidence on the judges and officials you've bought. Do that, and you might see prison instead of a rope." The saloon went quiet. Silas's companions edged away, suddenly finding urgent business elsewhere. Only his corps of hired guns remained, hands hovering near weapons. "You're joking." "Do I look like I'm joking?" Eden opened the portfolio, revealing the accumulated evidence. Sworn statements from 18 women, financial records showing systematic fraud. 3 of your own men willing to testify about the murders you ordered. And this, she produced a final document, a federal warrant for your arrest, signed yesterday in Phoenix. Silas went very still.
You're bluffing.
Sheriff Epps stepped forward, badge glinting. Federal Marshal Thompson is 2 hours behind us with a full posse. The territorial governors had enough of the corruption. You're the example they're going to make. Unless, Eden continued, you cooperate. Full confession, names, dates, amounts, everyone you've bought, everyone who's helped you. Do that, and Garrett here files for clemency. 20 years instead of hanging. 20 years, Silas laughed, but it rang hollow. I'd rather take my chances. With Judge Cornelius, he's already in custody. Turns out he had expensive tastes and kept very detailed records of who paid for them. Eden leaned forward. Your protection's gone. Silas, your money's frozen. Your men are abandoning you. All you have left is a choice, prison or the gallows. The silence stretched taut. Silas's scarred face worked through emotions. Rage, disbelief, calculation. Finally, something like defeat settled in his eyes. If I confess, he said slowly, what guarantee do I have? Garrett spoke up. My word as an officer of the court. Full confession earns clemency consideration. Partial confession earns nothing. And them, Silas gestured to Eden and Asa. What's to stop them from shooting me the moment I sign Yuri? Our word, Asa said simply, which, unlike yours, means something. Another long moment. Then Silas reached for the pen. 20 years, he muttered. You've condemned me to 20 years of hell. No, Eden replied quietly. You condemned yourself the moment you decided other people's lives were yours to buy and sell. He signed page after page, his handwriting growing more erratic as the confession lengthened. Names tumbled out. Judges, sheriffs, businessmen, a network of corruption spanning 3 territories. By the end, his hands shook and sweat beaded his scarred forehead. There, he threw down the pen. Satisfied? Almost. Eden pulled out one final document. The deeds to the properties you stole. Sign them over to the women you imprisoned. And that's not part of... It is now. Her voice carried steel. Call it restitution. He signed those too, each signature a nail in the coffin of his empire. When Marshal Thompson arrived with his posse, they found Silas slumped at the bar, defeated. The arrest was almost anticlimactic. No gunfight, no dramatic escape attempt, just a broken man led away in shackles, his kingdom of cruelty reduced to ink on paper. It's really over, Mina breathed, watching from the saloon door. This part is, Eden corrected. Building something better that's just beginning. They returned to Dry Willow to find the town transformed. Word had traveled ahead, and the streets filled with celebration. The women from the ranch, now landowners, wept at their sudden fortune. Business owners talked of expansion without fear of extortion. Even the air seemed lighter, cleaner. That night, the Silver Comet overflowed with joy. Food appeared from every kitchen in town. Music spilled from instruments long silent, and stories were shared that had been buried in fear for years. You did it, someone called to Eden. You brought him down. We did it, Eden corrected, raising her glass of sarsaparilla. All of us, together. Later, as the celebration wound down, Eden found herself on the porch with Asa. Inside, Mina was teaching the other women a dance from her childhood, their laughter bright as stars. 20 years, Asa mused. Think he'll survive it? Does it matter his power's broken? The women are free. The town can breathe. Eden leaned against the rail. That's enough justice for me. And now we build. The women will need help learning to run their properties. The town needs honest law enforcement. There are other Dry Willows out there, other Silases. She smiled. Plenty of work for a cook and a gun hand with steady aim. Is that what we are? Eden considered, among other things. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the town they'd fought for celebrate its freedom. Tomorrow would bring challenges, rebuilding trust, establishing new systems, helping broken souls heal. But tonight, Dry Willow was free. That prosecutor, Asa said eventually. He offered you a job, investigating these corruption networks. He did. You considering it? Eden touched the wooden spoon in her pocket, thinking of her mother, of all the women who'd fought alone and lost. Maybe, but not alone. Never alone, Asa agreed. Partners. Partners. They shook on it, there on the porch of the Silver Comet, while inside, free women danced and sang. The desert wind carried their joy out into the vast darkness, a sound more beautiful than any hymn. Justice had come to Dry Willow not through violence, but through truth, not through running, but through standing firm. It wasn't perfect, it never was, but it was real, and it was theirs. And in the morning, Eden Hale would cook breakfast for a free town, in a kitchen that had become a fortress, with a partner who'd proved that some things were worth fighting for. The broken spoon in her pocket seemed to pulse with warmth, as if her mother's spirit approved. Sometimes the best revenge wasn't destroying your enemies, but building something they could never understand. A community bound by choice rather than chains, strengthened by shared struggle rather than broken by fear. 20 years, Silas had said, like it was a death sentence. But 20 years from now, Dry Willow would still be free, still be strong, still be home to those who'd fought for it. And Eden Hale would still be cooking, still be fighting, still be standing. That was justice enough for anyone. The first drops of rain fell on Dry Willow 3 months after Silas Rook's arrest, breaking a drought that had lasted 2 years. Eden stood on the porch of the newly rebuilt Silver Comet, watching the desert drink deep of the unexpected blessing. The air smelled of wet sage and redemption. Never thought I'd see it, Jeb the prospector said, holding out his hand to catch the drops. Rain in Dry Willow. It's like the land itself is celebrating. Inside, the transformation was even more profound. What had once been just a saloon with a kitchen had become the Silver Comet Inn and restaurant. The fire damage had been an opportunity to expand new dining room, proper lodging rooms upstairs, and a kitchen that would have made any San Francisco establishment proud. Mina emerged from that kitchen now, flour dusting her cheeks, carrying a tray of fresh peach cobbler. She'd grown inches, it seemed, in the months since her escape. No longer hunched with fear. She moved with confidence earned through safety and purpose. 50 for dinner tonight, she announced. The Patterson family's celebrating their youngest's wedding. Plus, we've got those cattle buyers from Tucson. You managing all right? Eden asked. Better than all right. Sarah's got the roast going. Mary's on vegetables. And the new girl, Emma, is proving handy with pastry. Mina grinned. Almost like you plan to train up a whole crew of cooks. Imagine that, Eden said dryly. It had been Asa's idea. Really, with the property deed Silas had been forced to sign over. The women from the ranch had resources, but no skills to manage them. So Eden had offered apprenticeships, room, board, and training in exchange for work. Within weeks, the Silver Comet had become an unofficial school for women learning not just cooking but business, accounting, and the kind of self-reliance that no one could take away. Eden, Mrs. Hutchins approached, ledger in hand. The afternoon stage brought this from Phoenix. Eden recognized Thomas Garrett's careful script. Inside, an offer. Not the first to join the federal prosecutor's new task force targeting corruption throughout the territory. Good pay, important work, the chance to prevent other Silases from taking root. Are you going to accept this time, Mrs.? Hutchins asked gently. A commotion in the street cut her off. Asa emerged from the sheriff's office, his office now, the star on his chest still looking foreign despite 2 months' wear. With him was a young woman, travel-worn and desperate-eyed, clutching a carpetbag like Eden once had.
Eden,
Asa said, guiding the woman to the porch.
this is Miss Rebecca Stone. She's come from Millbrook. Seems they have a problem. Sounds familiar.
Rebecca's story tumbled out between tears. Another town, another predator using debt and intimidation to control desperate women. Another system that needed breaking.
Please,
Rebecca finished.
they said in Tucson that you helped here, that you fought back and won. We need that kind of help.
Eden looked at the letter in her hand, then at the woman before her, at Mina. Strong and capable where once she'd been broken. At the dining room full of families who ate without fear. At Asa, who'd found his purpose in protecting rather than merely surviving.
We'll help, she said. But not just Asa and me. This time we do it right from the start.
Over the following days, they organized, not a rescue mission but a teaching expedition. Eden and 3 of her trained women would go to Millbrook, establish themselves, and work from within. Asa would follow with legal support and backup if needed. They'd document everything, involve federal authorities from the beginning, and most importantly, teach the women of Millbrook to save themselves.
It's dangerous,
Asa warned the night before departure. They sat in the kitchen after closing, planning by lamplight. Everything worthwhile is, Eden replied, but we've proven it can be done. Now we need to prove it can be replicated.
And the prosecutor's offer?
We'll still be there when we get back, or maybe, she smiled, maybe we're already doing the job, just in our own way. The morning they left, half the town turned out to see them off. The wagon was loaded with more than supplies. It carried hope, hard-won knowledge, and the absolute certainty that no one had to face their demons alone. "You'll write?" Mina asked, trying not to cry.
Every week,
Eden promised. "And you'll run things here. You're ready." "Because you taught me." "No, because you were strong enough to learn." As the wagon rolled out, Eden looked back one last time at Dry Willow. The town that had taken her in as a desperate runaway had become something more. A beacon. A symbol that change was possible. The Silver Comet sign gleamed in the morning sun, and smoke rose from its chimneys like incense to possibilities. "Regrets?" Asa asked from the driver's seat.
"None.
I spent years wandering, looking for something I couldn't name. Turns out it was purpose, community, home." He glanced at her. "And a partner stubborn enough to stand when running would be easier. Flattery will get you everywhere. Sheriff Crow." "I'm counting on it." They laughed, the sound carrying across the desert like a promise. Behind them, Dry Willow continued its transformation from a town that survived to one that thrived. Ahead, Millbrook waited, unaware that help approached in the form of women who'd learned that wooden spoons could be weapons and recipes could be revolution. 6 months later, a letter would arrive at the Silver Comet from Millbrook, not asking for help but offering it. Another predator had fallen. Another network dismantled. Another group of women standing free. The movement Eden had started was spreading like wildfire across the territory, each freed town teaching the next. A year later, Thomas Garrett would write a report to Washington detailing the collapse of debt slavery systems across 3 territories, crediting grassroots justice movements led by remarkable women who refused to accept the unacceptable. 5 years later, Eden Hale Crow would stand in the Phoenix courthouse, watching the governor sign legislation protecting debtors from predatory practices. Beside her, Asa would squeeze her hand as she touched the wooden spoon she still carried, whole, scarred, but unbroken. But all of that was still to come. For now, there was just a wagon rolling toward the next fight, carrying 2 people who'd learned that love wasn't just passion, but partnership. That justice wasn't just winning, but building, and that sometimes the greatest adventure was simply refusing to stop until the dawn. The rain had finally come to Dry Willow, washing the dust from the streets, and filling the air with the scent of new growth. In the Silver Comet, Mina and the other women prepared for the lunch crowd, their laughter rising like bread in a warm oven. Sheriff Epps, finally retired, dozed in a chair by the window. His deputy star passed on to worthier hands. And somewhere between Dry Willow and Millbrook, Eden Hale and Asa Crow rode toward another sunset, another challenge, another chance to prove that ordinary people could do extraordinary things when they stood together. The wooden spoon, mended and treasured, knocked gently against Eden's hip with each bump in the road, a reminder that broken things could be made whole, that endings could be beginnings, and that every dawn was worth fighting for. In Dry Willow, the Silver Comet served its famous beans and cornbread to travelers who often stayed longer than planned, drawn by something they couldn't quite name, if you asked the locals. They'd tell you it was Eden's cooking, but those who looked closer knew the truth. It was the taste of freedom, seasoned with courage and served with a side of unshakable hope. And that, more than any recipe, was the legacy Eden Hale left wherever her wooden spoon stirred the pot. Thank you so much for listening to this story of courage, redemption, and the power of community in the Old West. I'm curious, where are you listening from? Are you driving through the desert highways? Cozied up at home? Or perhaps taking a break at work? Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts on Eden and Asa's journey, and where in the world their story reached you. If you enjoyed this tale of frontier justice and found strength in Eden's determination to build something better from the ashes, please consider subscribing to Wild West Night for more stories that bring the American frontier to life. Hit that like button if Eden's courage inspired you, and please consider hitting the hype button to help this story reach more listeners who might need to hear that standing together is always stronger than standing alone. Until next time, partners, keep riding toward your own dawn.